Hi, everyone. Welcome back or welcome to the Aural Theory series. My name is Dr. Julia Alford. In today's video, we are going to take a look at adding in one more chord. If you haven't already, you want to check out our series. You can go below to see a link to see how we got here in harmonic dictation land. We're rounding the corner on finishing up diatonic harmonic dictation. All right, let's go ahead and dive in. I want to start by looking at something that we've been hinting at this whole time, and it's a chart that shows the phrase model and generally like which chords you can have when and for what. So this kind of shows we start at the one chord. We're looking at here in major. I'll flip to the minor version in minutes. It's basically the same thing, but we have different areas. So far we've been doing tonic expansion, which is, our 1 and our 5 chord and our 1 and our 5 and the various inversions of that. It also has the 7 diminished 7 chord in it, we're not going to get into, but it could be. And then we go to our strong predominance, and we did add in last time the 6, which is considered one of the weaker predominant chords that we have. So our strong predominants are our 4 and our 2, really the 2, 6. So anything that has fa in the bass is the strongest predominant. And then the other 2 chords, a 2 chord of root position could still fit that role, but it's not as likely to, if that makes sense. And then our dominant chords at the cadence. So 5, 7, the 5, the cadential 6, 4, maybe the 7 diminished 6 doesn't happen that often in the cadential point. It would make it a pretty weak cadence. And then we've got our tonic chord. Okay, so those are the chords you can have in those different functions. This week we're adding in one more weak predominant, and that's the 3 chord. 3 chord is very limited. It can really only go to the 6 and the 4. It's more often used in a sequence than in like the opening of a classical piece, but we're still going to take a look at it, which kind of like starts to dip our toe into sequence land, but we're actually not dipping our toes into sequence land. It's just kind of like the chords that you get in a sequence we're going to start looking at today. So these are our various areas that we can have, and we're going to listen for, are we starting with a tonic expansion, or are we instead going straight from the 1 into some weak predominance and then into a stronger predominant and then cadencing. So you can skip over tonic expansion. I've at times called this an alternative opening, which it would be an alternative to tonic expansion. I think talking about it in terms of a weak predominant also makes total sense. Actually, they talk about this. If you look at the text, Open Music Theory, it's online. I'll drop a link below. Hopefully I remember. If not, leave a comment and remind me. There's some great stuff in there about these different chords and their function. If you want to read up a little bit more, you can go there. A really great resource. So then if we look at this in minor, which we are going to be in minor today, so it's a good thing to look at. So you could go from the 1 to the 3 to the 6, or the 1 to 3 to the 4. We've covered all the different solfege options, so I'm not going to dig into it here, but remember that for the tonic expansion section, you have certain solfege. The strong predominance, most likely they're going to be fa in the bass. In minor, it's only going to be in fa in the bass. You're not going to have a diminished chord triad in root position. I guess you could have a 2 half diminished 7 in root position, but we're also not going to get into that here. So the last solfege option that we have is mi, which we already saw mi in the bass with the 1 chord. If you had a 1 in first inversion, if you remember, I said at that point you could assume. Now we're going to start having to listen a little bit closer to decide, is it a 1, 6 with mi or may in the bass, the 3rd scale degree, or is it a 3 chord? Okay, so, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little compare and contrast. So I'm going to play 2 progressions. 1 is tonic expansion, and 1 is this sort of going straight to the weak predominance to the strong. But the bass line for both is exactly the same. Okay, so same bass line, different chord progressions. So here's the first example. That was the first example. Again, this is your bass line. Okay, do, here's the second one. That was a little bit odd. It did something a little bit different there to keep the bass line the same. So the first one is tonic expansion. 1, 1, 6, 5, 4, 2, 1, 6, 1. Okay. The second one is odd. Well, it's new because it's the 1 to the 3 to the 4, but then I sent the 4 back to the 1, which it can do, especially in this space. Sometimes you'll get just like a 1, 4, 1 in the beginning of a progression. That can happen also. So we're adding in a couple new things here, but let's listen to how different that sounds. So the first one again is 1, 1, 6, 5, 4, 2, 1, 6. And the second one, 1, 3, 4, 1, 6. Okay, so that 1 to 3, it sounds completely different from anything we've heard before, right? If you can't hear that, go back and listen to those two contrasting several times to see if you can get the difference between the two of them. Okay, the more likely progression in this case would be, in the second case, would be this. So it would be 1 to a 3 to a 4, and then to a 5 or 5, 7 to the 1 chord. All right, so in that case you have do, mi, fa, sol, do. And that's one of the things you can listen for. So if you hear do, mi, fa, and then it's going back to mi, it's probably tonic expansion. If you hear do, mi, fa, sol, then it could be, or actually it has to be at least the 4 to the 5. You could have a 1, 1, 6, 4. In that case, that would sound, let me see if I can figure it out. 1, 1, 6, to a 4, not sure about the voice leading, to a 5, okay? But the point is that a 4 is probably going to go to a 5, and a 5, 4, 2 has to either go to the 1, 6 or to a different 5 chord because of certain voice leading rules. Okay, so let's try one of these progressions and see how you do with it. And honestly, the soprano helps a lot too, because if you noticed in that last progression, the first one, you had that voice exchange between the bass and the soprano. So the do and the bass went to mi, and the mi and the soprano went to do. But then in the 1 to the 3, there's a lot of common tones. So the mi stayed on mi because we're doubling the root. So that's another clue. So if you've got a 3 or mi or me in the bass, and then the mi is repeating in the right hand, that's a pretty good clue that you're going 1 to a 3. Okay, so let's dig into the progression. So it's in B minor. It is 7 chords. You have do in the bass and do in the soprano. So B and B. And when we're thinking about mapping, so we've been doing this whole thing of like marking tonic expansion and then the predominant and then the dominant and the tonic. Now, if we don't have a tonic expansion, what do we mark? Okay, so I think for my students, let's do this. You're going to kind of work backwards. You're going to mark the tonic at the end, and you're going to mark where the dominant section starts. And then before that, mark that as your strong predominant. And then everything else, you're either going to mark it as tonic expansion or another predominant, or we'll still call it alternative opening just for simplicity's sake. Okay, so let's give it a go. We'll listen twice just to get the lay of the land, help you familiarize yourself with it, and then we'll dig into the bass. So this first one, just listen. See if you can tell how many dominant chords there are. Is there more than one strong predominant, or are we just kind of like getting to the predominant and then going to the dominant section? Let's try it. What did you think? Was there a cadential 6/4 at the end? Let's listen again. See if you can mark if there's a cadential 6/4 or not, and where the strong predominant happens. Okay, so like make a little arrow. And let's try that. Big clue here, there is a cadential 6/4, so you've got 2 chords for the dominant section. Let's take a look at the map and now. Okay, so we have alternative opening at the beginning, there's a strong predominant on chord 4, and then we have 2 chords for your dominant section and your tonic chord at the end. All right, let's grab this bass. So starting here. Okay. One more listening for the bass. Let's see if you can get it. It's not very long, so hum along if you need to, and let's see if we can work it out. All right. Back up and grab more listings if you need to. Here's the answer in 3, 2, 1. There we go. So we have, starts on do, as we know, do, may, lay, fa, sol, sol, do. Okay. Sometimes with that 1, 3, 6, you'll get something that can honestly be a little bit easier here, like a surrounding of do. So do, may, do, may, lay. But I didn't want honestly, that fa to get too low, so I had to go up. So it's do, may, lay, fa, which could be hard to hear, but again, if you're keeping in mind your context, the 3 has to go to 4 or 6. So do, may, if you know that that's a 3, and if you're listening, if you had your map right, you know it's not tonic expansion. So may, if you know it's not tonic expansion, you know it has to be a 3 chord, and then you know it has to go either to fa or up to lay. So it's a step or a skip. And in this case, it's do, may, lay, skips down to a fa, sol, sol, do. All right, let's see about that soprano line. Okay, not too exciting. So it should be relatively simple to grab. Go ahead and hum along, hum and some sung right. Go ahead and hum along. You get it. Okay, let's try it again. If you want to sing it there. Okay, cool. So back up and grab more listens if you need to. We have got, and here we go. So do, te, lay, so double lays, another big clue, lay, lay, sol, sol, do. Okay, so let's talk about chord qualities and chord options. So it starts on a 1 chord, as we know. It's not a 5. It has to start on a 1 or a 5, so it starts on a 1 chord. And then it's our alternative opening or weaker predominance, and that's going to give us our 3 chord, which is major. So that's the other clue. If you start a minor and you hear a nice bright major sound and it's not a dominant chord, it's probably major 3. Could be also 6. You could go 1 to 6. So 1 to 3, and then going up to lay, it has to be the 6th chord. Okay. And then we're going to go down to fa. That could be a 4 or a 2 diminished 6. And then we have our cadential 6/4, and your question there is that second chord a 5/7, or is it just a regular 5 chord? Okay, so is it 5/6/4 to 5/3, or 5/8/6/4 to 7/5/3? So if you think about the soprano line, that would give you a clue, okay? But I'm not going to tell you. So let's listen twice for quality. Again, your only questions here are that 4th chord. I guess that 3rd chord, it could be a 4/6. So jump the gun, although that kind of gave it away. But a 4/6 would be minor, and the 4th chord is either a minor chord, which would be the 4, or diminished, which would be a 2/6. Then you're asking yourself, is that second to last chord dominant, or is it just a triad? Okay, so let's listen a couple more times for quality. Here we go. Okay, maybe you got it. One more time. You got it? Yeah? Let's look at the answer in 3, 2, 1. Here we go. All right, so we have a minor 1 to a major 3 to a major 6. Okay, so if we think about the voice leading, I guess if it was a 4/6, let me play you how that would sound. Sorry, 1 to a 3 to a 4/6 would be. Instead, we had, and that also, it would have stayed completely stagnant probably, or changed dramatically between the 4/6 and the next chord, between the 4. So 1, we had it's 1, 3, minor, major, still major, to the minor 4, diminished, so 6 to, nope, sorry, 6 to would be that, which sounds kind of weird. 6, diminished, odd sound, so unlikely. To the cadential 6/4, only a triad. I mentioned that the soprano voice was a big clue, because if you think about the 5/7 chord, F, A, C sharp, E, the most likely voice leading is for that F in the soprano to get that 7th, is to go down to the E and then descend to the D, because the 7th of the chord has to go down. So if it was a 5/7, that's what you would have had. You actually can't get to that E any other way. So if you have Do in the soprano on the 1st chord of the cadential 6/4 chord, and it doesn't descend, it's a pretty safe guess it's just a triad, and it's 6/4 to 5/3. Okay, so again, that would be, that's a 5/3. If it was the 7, it would be, right, pretty different. Okay, that's it. So go do some practice, and I'll see you all in the next video. Okay, bye.